Really drive the digital revolution into manufacturing. Today's a little bit different. It's a bit more interactive, so you're not just going to be allowed to sit there and watch for the whole day. And it's also much more about how we can actually go about implementing it and doing something about it. But to start the day off, we've got our keynote speech. Any of you who were here yesterday will know him well. It's Juergen Maier from Siemens, who's also the publisher or the chief publisher of the big book, as it's now going to be known, which you were all introduced to yesterday. So over to you, Juergen.
You see, I go everywhere with my book now. That's it. I've got it everywhere. Good morning to all of you, and great to see you. And I'm going to say I've loved the atmosphere and the buzz that there is around this conference, and I do feel that we are at the beginning of a bit of a new movement, and let me just build on that in the few words that I'll leave you with this morning. So because I do need to skip off shortly after this address. So what I'll talk about is a lot of what we started debating yesterday, which is about the adoption of technologies, and it is about leadership. And it's leadership. We had a bit of a discussion about that yesterday. Leadership from industry, and of course it's leadership in partnership with government. But just let me start with adoption, and I'll go to the book, chapter 3, verse 2. And it is actually in part 3. There are quite a few statistics, and actually I'm not going to read them all out because they're all in here and you can read them. And the fact is, you know them anyway. And that is that, when you do look at the statistics, various surveys, actually I will read one of them, go on then. Boston Consulting Group found that only 9% of UK companies in the manufacturing space had felt they'd made any real progress on the journey towards Industry 4.0. In another one, only 8% had a good understanding of what Industry 4.0 is. You see, I said I wasn't going to read them, and then I did. But, they're really not great statistics. I mean, the good news is those numbers, when you go to Germany and Sweden, they're actually not that much better. They're sort of in the 20%, although I did see one German survey where German government was getting very upset that only 50% of their engineering population were on this journey of Industry 4.0, and I sort of thought, gosh, if we were concerned about only 50%, we'd be in a much better place. So we clearly have an issue with adoption. And what do we need to do? Well, there are things that as a nation we need to get together on and sort out and get better organised on. And again, these are some of the things that we focused on when we did this piece of work. The national adoption programme, I think would be a great initiative if we can get that off the ground. So a programme to make business support more visible. We talked a bit yesterday about the 120 odd schemes that there are out there, making that a lot simpler. We talked a lot about standards and interoperability, and I'm not going to get into that because I've noticed the next 2 sessions are all about that topic, which is of course very important. Cybersecurity is also on your agenda. So these are all the sorts of barriers that we see as manufacturers. And by the way, I am talking to you here as a manufacturer as well as a technology provider. We have 15 factories here in the UK and 250 factories globally. So we have exactly these same issues that every other manufacturer. But my sort of advice is, look, if we sit around and we wait for all of these programs, and and I think the gentleman from India said it perfectly yesterday. If we wait for all the standards to be perfectly set, for all the interoperability issues to be sorted, we'll be waiting forever, and we'll never be adopting. And it sort of makes me reflect back to my good old days as a manufacturing engineer. One of my very early jobs was actually, after IT had failed to put in the first ERP system into our factory, they thought, we'll give this job to a manufacturing chap instead. And here's a young, enthusiastic graduate out of university. He must know something about computers. He'll put this system in for us. And of course, the first system was a car crash. The second one wasn't much better, and we were still learning on the third. And by the time we got to the fifth, we got it about right. But actually 1, 2, 3, and 4 were essential on that journey, because it wasn't just about the technology, it was about the people issues. It was about the skills, it was about the culture, it was people to moving off paper-based systems and onto the first computer-based systems. So every time that you work on one of these platforms that might not yet be the perfect platform, you are learning in a big way. So I say just get on the journey and do it. So, if you do want to go down the journey and you play with a GE Predict system, go and do it, because, you will learn masses. And eventually, when you make the right decision and come onto a Siemens MindSphere system, then all of that learning will be perfect. And we will work with you to develop the rest of the journey. But joking apart, even if you come onto a MindSphere system, one thing I will promise you is that we'll make lots of mistakes together. Because that is part of what this journey is about. But we will also stick with you and make sure that we absolutely resolve the issues, and together we will learn this journey of digitalization. And so just coming back to what else we can do as the manufacturers. So one is just get on with it and start playing. And the other thing is, I do think I'm talking to the I'm talking to the 8% here. That's why you're at this conference. The 92% don't even know this conference is going on. And so therefore, I do think we have another role, and that is for the people who are the converted, and that is us in the room. We've got to sort of get out there and raise enthusiasm and bring people on board. It's of course particularly a responsibility for larger companies like ours. We have to get out there, work with our supply chains, bring them in, and help them on this adoption story. And I do genuinely believe that we have a bit of a perfect storm. I've always said never waste a good crisis, and by hell we've created a brilliant crisis. Brexit, we have a massive productivity challenge. Living standards are not at all what the nation is looking for, and Lord Pryor said it perfectly yesterday. Unless we sort the productivity challenge, we will never get ourselves out of this issue. I've been convinced about that forever. Unless you raise productivity, we will not be able to raise living standard. And what raises productivity? Well, it's manufacturing and it's new technology. So, here is the perfect storm, and it's ours for the taking. And of course, we have to make sure that we, as the 8%, that we get out there and we enthuse the many more people out there. So, please do that. And there's lots of ways of doing it in your local chambers, in your LEPs, in your growth hubs. We heard yesterday about initiatives like LCR 4.0 in Liverpool. There's lots of these initiatives out there. And hopefully, as we launch the National Adoption Programme, you can get on board with that, and we can get out there and enthuse people. And there are other things that we need to do as business. And that is, just get on with it and train our people. I was speaking to a few people here and saying, we just need to get on with this. And it's not about training everybody on being experts in artificial intelligence or additive manufacturing. It's much more about the change aspects with that technology. We all get it. We're leaders in our fields, we've worked in manufacturing, we've seen lots of change, but there are people in our organisations that haven't had that benefit, and they are a bit scared, as we discussed with Tim Page on the panel yesterday. And I think it's our responsibility to provide training for them. What does all of this mean? And I can tell you we haven't done enough in Siemens on that, but we are going to take that much more seriously, and we are now making training material available for everybody to make sure that they can become more familiar, more comfortable. And obviously, as and when and if we get a national sort of training portal that is certified together on this, that will help. But there is already a lot of material out there, and there is nothing to stop us going ahead and training our people much more. And of course, we can get on and engage with the Catapults. And again, I know you are, but there will be people as part of your supply chains who can come on board in the ecosystem we already have. We need to make those ecosystems better. You know, we heard yesterday about some of what Germany is doing, and it is pretty impressive what happens in Germany. You know, those wonderful Festo kits that you see out in the demonstration hall, which is full of Siemens technology. They are you know, all over Germany for companies to come and play with and engage on Industry 4.0. So again, I think you know, you can get out there and enthuse and inspire, and I think that that is ultimately what we've got to do. And you know, when I sort of give these sort of speeches, I often sort of wonder and reflect back. You know, I wonder what it was like to have been here in the UK at the sort of the first and at the beginning of the second industrial revolution. And I'm not talking about, you know, all of the pollution and all of those things. I'm talking about, you know, just the pride that there must have been around. You know, can you imagine when people like, you know, Ferranti and Bessemer and Parsons and, you know, when these people, you know, met up in a pub, you know, what sorts of conversations they must have been having, and the sort of pride that they must have felt for this industrial nation that that they have created. And when I you know, engage in this sort of work, you know, that's in the back of my mind. You know, can we get our mojo back as a nation to the extent that we are so proud of this industrial future that we are going to create for the next generation. And of course, that's exactly what it's about. You know, the real fruits of this industrial revolution will come in 10 or probably 20 years' time, but we've got to sow the seeds. And I think we actually have a responsibility to do that. So that would be my calling to all of us who are in the 8%. To really get out there, take that responsibility, act now, help make it happen, because one thing would be an absolute tragedy, and that is if in 20 years' time there are people here and having the same conversation and saying, well, we missed the boat on the fourth revolution, and let's now try and win the fifth. So let's make it the fourth. Thank you very much. Have a brilliant conference. Enjoy the rest of your discussions. Thank you.